The Miracle of Mac. In the charming town of Maple Grove, where the streets are lined with golden and crimson trees during the fall, an extraordinary story was about to unfold. It was the kind of miracle that we hear about in fairy tales, one that seems too fantastical to believe, but as unbelievable as it seemed, it happened just the same. The Henderson family, Sarah, James, and their 6-month-old daughter Emily, led a life marked by invisible battles and a quiet yet persistent hope. Emily had been born with severe paralysis, a condition that rendered her unable to move her arms and legs. From the moment of her birth, Emily had the most striking eyes filled with life, despite the stillness of her body. She would look up at her parents with a gaze that seemed to speak of love and joy, yet she could not interact with the world around her. Sarah, a dedicated pediatric nurse, had made the painful decision to leave her career behind to care for Emily full-time. It was a sacrifice she willingly made, but one that weighed heavily on her heart. James, her husband, worked tirelessly at a warehouse, often picking up extra shifts to cover the mounting costs of Emily's medical bills and therapies. They were worn out, emotionally and physically drained, but they clung to the hope that things could improve. They believed, with every fiber of their beings, that one day, somehow, Emily's life would change. Their home, however, had ceased to feel like a place of comfort. The once cozy living room had transformed into a makeshift hospital. The beeping of machines, the constant scent of antiseptic, and the sight of therapeutic mats and medical devices scattered across the floor made every day feel like a never-ending cycle of recovery and struggle. Still, in the midst of it all, Emily's eyes sparkled with an unmistakable light. Despite the limitations of her body, there was a sense of wonder in her gaze. And every time she smiled, even for a fleeting moment, it gave Sarah and James the strength to push through another day. But little did they know, the help they so desperately needed was closer than they could have imagined. Across the fence, Mrs. Rodriguez, a seasoned golden retriever breeder, had recently welcomed a new litter of puppies into her home. They were lively, playful, and filled with boundless energy. But among the puppies, there was one that stood out. Max, the smallest of the litter, had eyes that seemed to look straight into the souls of those around him. His deep, knowing gaze made it feel as though he understood more than any puppy should. One afternoon, while Mrs. Rodriguez sat on her porch, watching the Hendersons from a distance, a thought crossed her mind. It was an idea that seemed strange at first, but grew stronger the more she considered it. This puppy Max, she thought, he has something special. He might be able to help that little girl. It wasn't something she could fully explain, but it felt like the answer to something bigger than she could grasp. And with that, Mrs. Rodriguez made a decision that would alter the course of the Hendersons' lives forever. Max's first visit to the Henderson home was nothing short of transformative. From the moment he entered the house, everything changed. He wasn't just a dog. His presence felt like it carried a purpose. At first, it seemed like a simple gesture, a neighborly introduction. But soon, Max walked straight over to Emily's chair. Without hesitation, he gently touched her small hand with his nose. At first, there was no reaction. But then, something remarkable happened. Emily, for the first time since her birth, emitted a sound. It wasn't a cry or a whimper, but a small giggle, soft, barely audible, but unmistakable. Sarah and James froze, staring in disbelief. They had never heard Emily make a sound like that before. It was as if the connection between the two, Emily and Max, had sparked something deep within her. A tear slid down Sarah's cheek, and she whispered, "Did you hear that, James?" She giggled. From that moment on, Max became a constant companion in Emily's therapy sessions. He wasn't just by her side, he was guiding her, encouraging her. In every session, Max seemed to challenge Emily to reach further, to stretch herself beyond what she thought was possible. He would nudge toys just out of her reach, pushing them farther and farther, making Emily strain with all her might to touch them. At first, it was a game. But soon, Sarah noticed something incredible. Emily was actually trying. Her arms, which had once been lifeless, were now moving. They trembled, they struggled, but they moved. Max was there every step of the way, as if silently saying, "I believe in you." And then, the moment came that no one in that house would ever forget. One afternoon, during a therapy session, Max pushed a toy farther away than he ever had before. Emily's eyes locked onto it. She was determined. With all the strength she could muster, she stretched her arm out toward the toy. Slowly, it moved. It was a struggle, but Emily was doing it. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. She couldn't believe her eyes. Emily's arm, once stiff and unyielding, was now moving with purpose. And then, in what felt like an eternity frozen in time, Emily reached out and grabbed the toy. The room erupted in a silence so heavy it felt like the world had stopped spinning. Sarah's voice trembled as she whispered, "She did it. She really did it." James, who had just entered the room, froze in place. His eyes widened, and a lump formed in his throat. She's moving," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. It was Max. Max made her do it. The next day, Dr. Thompson, the neurologist, was called to assess Emily's progress. When he arrived, he was skeptical. But after watching Emily in her chair, with Max loyally by her side, Dr. Thompson's demeanor shifted. He approached Emily and then looked at Max, his eyes filled with disbelief. "I've seen countless cases in my career," he said, his voice shaking. "But I've never seen anything like this. This dog is doing something that defies science." But the real test was still to come. One cold November morning, as Emily played with one of her toys, a piece of it became lodged in her throat. Panic swept through the house as Sarah rushed to her daughter. Max, however, noticed the danger immediately. He began barking frantically, alerting Sarah to the peril. In a blur, Sarah rushed to Emily and was able to clear her throat in time. Without Max, the outcome could have been far different. Max wasn't just a puppy, he was a protector. Then, in December, during one of the family's daily therapy sessions, Max set up the biggest challenge yet. He placed a toy farther away than ever before. Emily, stronger now, looked at the toy with fierce determination. She stretched her arm, more resolutely than ever. Her small muscles strained, but with every ounce of strength she had, she reached out. And then, in a moment of pure triumph, she grabbed the toy. Sarah, overwhelmed with emotion, began filming the moment. She watched in awe as Emily clutched the toy tightly in her hand. The camera slipped from her fingers as she rushed to embrace her daughter. "You did it, my baby," she cried, her voice filled with joy. "You did it." And then, Emily did something that took everyone's breath away. With her face glowing with happiness, she looked at Max, her steadfast companion, and with a radiant smile, she uttered her first word. "Mac." The video of Emily's miraculous moment spread like wildfire across social media. It touched millions of hearts worldwide. People from all walks of life shared the story of the miraculous bond between Emily and Max. Specialists began studying the connection, trying to understand how such an extraordinary relationship could heal and inspire others. But for the Henderson family, Max wasn't a subject for scientific research. He was family. Max had given Emily the chance to live, to move, to hope. And in doing so, he had brought new life and hope to everyone around him. He was a living testament to the fact that sometimes, miracles come in the most unexpected forms, a tiny golden puppy with a wagging tail and a heart capable of miracles.